There is a mysteriously intriguing piece of information you may have missed regarding the current crisis in eastern DRC, where on February 16, 2025, another major city, Bukavu, fell under the coalition of rebel AFC M23 without facing any serious resistance. Now, interestingly enough, 3 decades ago, a similar scenario took place when President Mobutu Sese Seko Kukumbwendu Wazabanga was in Switzerland, and on this version, President Tshisekedi was in Germany. Anyways, let's get into this. You see, I'll provide additional details and information to add to everything that's already out there and you've probably already heard, while offering a completely different perspective, because I know for sure you may have missed that there is a new key player who has imposed its weight in this diplomatic crisis in order to, trying to find solution. However, its entrance into this dance has already created controversy for attempting to disrupt the current deadlock. You see, there is one piece of interesting information that when I initially heard, I thought it was nonsensical because at the time it didn't make any sense. But the more I kept stumbling on it, I decided to look it up only to find out that it is true. There is no smoke without fire. And here it is. Did you know that before deciding to pick up their weapons and take over the city of Bunagana by entering from Uganda to shape the reality that we are currently experiencing in eastern DRC, M23 representatives had spent 14 months in Kinshasa, the capital city of DRC, allegedly under the care of President Tshisekedi's administration. They were fed, housed in hotels, and even met the interior minister at the time. And this is according to Willingoma, who is the M23 spokesperson, who also added that they were communicating daily with President Tshisekedi's administration. However, on one occasion, President Tshisekedi addressed the rumor of their presence in Kinshasa, claiming that he was never aware of their presence until the day he was informed that, by his interior minister, that the M23 representatives were in the capital city and wanted to meet up with him. But the president claimed to have categorically declined to meet with them, and also added maybe their representative assumed because they met the interior minister that he was acting on behalf of the president. Look, he made sure to let people know that he did not know how long they stayed in the capital city and who invited them. Now, this alone raises many questions, such as who's telling the truth, who invited them, but above all, knowing what the government knew they were capable of, why no proper measures were taken, no proper measures were put in place to make sure they do not become a problem. Listen, I will always wonder why the takeover of the city of Goma, the outcry was much louder than when Bunagana fell under the rebel control. Look, if they were stopped at the point of entry, it wouldn't have spread like bushfire. Anyway, allow me to assume that you already know that in early Feb, an important joint summit between two African blocs, the SADC and the EAC, met in Tanzania to discuss a way forward out of this crisis. And I will summarize the outcome in one word: negotiation or dialogue. Just pick whichever you like. But the bottom line is this: both blocs agreed that a political and diplomatic solution is the only sustainable way out of this crisis. In fact, the best option for the population who are constantly anxious and live in a state of fear, as it aims to preserve life by limiting the number of casualties of war. Let's be blunt and honest about what we are seeing. Militarily, the government in charge of protecting its citizens and the country's national integrity so far has failed. Look, for a country to be under attack is one thing, but for the country being under attack not being able to defend itself because the authority has not given it the possibility to do so is diabolical. This administration in 6 years has failed to properly train and build a strong 21st century army, a deterrent force that would scare even the imaginary angel Gabriel just by looking at their boots. But worse, that money allocated to do that mysteriously evaporated in a broad daylight before reaching them. And the result of that is seen on how the country is losing battles. Listen, the reality is this. Too many people, both national, continental, and international, benefit from this conflict and wouldn't want it to end. A recent investigative piece by Alain Foucault about DRCongo mines exposes that behind every Lebanese, Chinese, and other foreign nationals who have breached all Congolese laws to get into the artisanal mining business stands a member of the government, a parliament, an army officer, or a politician who guarantees their security, obviously in exchange of some oiling of hands. You see, in that video, he explained that whenever they enter the mining concession that was acquired illegally and run by a foreign national but guarded by the Congolese National Army, the foreign nationals were quick to threaten the journalist and his crew by letting them know that they knew people in high places in the country who can crush them. And according to Alain Foucault, some mines that were shut down by the regional authority due to his work of exposing the truth were quickly reopened because of the pressure that came from Kinshasa. Basically, they have a free pass to pollute and sell the gold however they want without any worry. Now, here's the interesting bit. He stated that the word in the streets in DRC is every politician has a Chinese, but he argues that it is every Chinese who has a politician or an army officer. Anyways, at this point, it's either we agree that all the African countries involved in talks in order to try to find a solution to this crisis are all wrong and Kinshasa is right, or Kinshasa is wrong and everybody else is right. Because it seems like everybody is pushing for a diplomatic and political solution, including South Africa and Angola. In fact, this decision was reflected in Bukavu, where Southern African peacekeeping forces had a white flag raised, but Kinshasa is still against the idea of sitting down and negotiating, even though AFC M23 coalition have always been open to that idea. But now they are in a much stronger position compared to when they had only Bunagana. However, it seems like the conception and perception of the country being at war is only present in the minds of the citizens who are directly and indirectly affected, but not necessarily in the minds of the politicians in charge. Look, when the coalition of rebels began heavily breathing on the neck of the city of Bukavu, it is alleged that there was a letter addressed to the authorities in Kinshasa from the civil societies of Bukavu, pleading with them not to engage with the rebels in the city for obvious reasons. Now, the new players to have joined the diplomatic dance is the Catholic Episcopal Commission, better known as CENCO. They've engaged all the parties involved in this crisis in all corners of Africa and Europe, starting with President Felix Tshisekedi, political opposition leaders, and even AFC M23 coalition in Goma, including President Paul Kagame in Kigali. However, a section of the population is not happy with their initiative, and they are asking them two questions. Who authorized them to do that, and in whose name they are speaking to the coalition of rebels or to President Paul Kagame? Some are even calling for protest against Catholic Church. I mean, are we meant to believe that none of the people they met while in the capital city knew what their plans were? Come on now. I mean, it's not as if they were even trying to conceal their plans. Look, it is alleged that they flew from Kinshasa to Nairobi, from Nairobi to Kigali, and from Kigali drove and entered the city of Goma to meet with Mr. Nanga. I mean, if the authorities in Kinshasa were against this move, why didn't they stop them from traveling? However, there is another potential solution that I don't think it is likely to happen, but if it does, someone is definitely entering Africa's and DRC's history's book without any debate. You see, in my village they say, if someone pretends to die, you must pretend to bury them. Listen, sometimes you just have to call someone's bluff, but let me first put it into context. Look, recently, Mr. Nanga, the former election chief, who is now one of the leaders of the AFC M23 coalition, once again publicly declared that President Tshisekedi never won the 2018 election. However, this time he added, if I created a monster, I believe it is my responsibility to undo it. Now, at the time of the event, the influential Catholic Church publicly came out to declare that the result did not match the data they collected. Even the African Union, which is often shy when it comes to matters of elections, got involved, raising serious doubts about the outcome of the election and called for a suspension of the final result. But interestingly, the chairperson of the African Union at the time was President Paul Kagame. Add to that the comment made by the former French Foreign Affairs Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian, who also seriously doubted the final result. He will always be remembered for famously saying, and I quote, "The elections finally concluded with a sort of African-style compromise." But let's be clear, the point here is not whether he won or stole the elections. However, if you believe Mr. Nanga is telling the truth, like many of his supporters, then he has an argument because it represents a breach of the Congolese constitution. Therefore, the same constitution justifies his actions because according to its Article 64, all Congolese have the duty to oppose any individual or group of individuals who seize power by force or who exercise it in violation of the provision of the Constitution. And that's the melody Mr. Nanga is currently playing to President Tshisekedi's ears, which brings us to the potential solution to solving this crisis. But I think you can already see where I'm going with this. Look, if President Felix Tshisekedi resigns from office today, then Mr. Nanga's fight is no longer justified. With his coalition, they would have to put down all their weapons, sit down and talk about the DRCongo without President Felix Tshisekedi in the vicinities of power. And in my humble opinion, if DRC wants a chance to recover from all this mess, they must restart with new faces by injecting fresh blood instead of always recycling the same people who were part of the problem in previous governments.
We, ni nini?